Welcome to the 31st episode of Tokenizing Everything, our weekly interview series with thought leaders in the blockchain industry. Today's guest is Alexander Koppel, CEO of Riddle Code, with whom I will be speaking about the entire blockchain ecosystem as well as custody. Before we begin, I have to mention that all opinions are solely personal and do not reflect the opinion of Amazing Blocks or any other related party. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Alexander. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me, Nicolas. It's an absolute pleasure to be on the show, I must say.
Yeah, definitely, and it's a pleasure to have you. I mean, a lot of amazing news coming from Riddle Code all the time, so it's great to have you here. So, would you like to start by just briefly giving an intro of yourself, who you are, and basically where your interest in blockchain stems from?
Sure. So, background, I've been working in innovation marketing basically the past 25 years. By coincidence, I must say, I've been ending up in the digital space. But I started out in infrastructure. So in 1996, I started to work for a company called UPC, Liberty Media. We were the first European broadband internet provider through cable, and then I switched sides from fixed line to mobile and worked for Hutchison Whampoa. And then in 2008, I decided to work for Red Bull, and I was there for 9 years building the Red Bull Media House. So also a total different way to bring innovation in media through a strong brand and strong brand offering. Yes, and then I think it was in 2017. It's amazing how time flies. I met Tom Fürsten, the founder of Riddle Code, and that was the moment I fell in love with Riddle Code and blockchain.
Okay, very exciting. And people always describe a certain wow moment, so to say, which really made them excited about the potential of this technology of blockchain in general, and where they really realized that this is an auspicious technology that will disrupt the entire next decade or so. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, was there a specific wow moment for you, a specific moment where kind of, you had that light bulb moment and you realized, okay, this is something where I want to go all in with? Maybe it was related to Tom.
No, very much so. I think my wow moment was really when, a bit of a background, to be honest, Nicolas. So having worked in telco and fixed line industries, I basically learn to understand the economics of subscriber management, acquiring subscribers, making money from subscribers. Then when I switched sides to media, in the very beginning, you learn the economics of audience, and audience economics are very similar to subscriber economics. Yeah? But later in 2013 or 14, when after the crisis of 2008 and 9, in media there was a small revolution happening, and the revolution came through the existence of new brands suddenly on a global scale. Yeah, so the Netflixes arrived, Amazon arrived, Hulu was around. So in combination with digitization, suddenly there was this moment where everybody said, look, everybody can be a media brand, and the smart guys, they go global from the very beginning. But having said that, I mean, also competition went global, right? To be able to compete in that ecosystem really required and still requires an immense access to capital. It's in the billions if you want to compete on that level with these content players. And I started to invest in companies focusing on identity, because I believe that controlling identity ultimately allows you to control the value chain. And if a lot of the media value chain and audience value chain is going global, i.e. it's basically run by US-based companies, the last thing we have here in Europe is controlling identity. And by coincidence and through a friend of mine, and also a friend of Tom's, who I got introduced to, I met Tom, and Tom explained to me the concept of identity, secure identity, in combination with distributed ledger. And I thought, wow, if you can manage identities decentral, that means everybody can participate in this network. if a machine and an object, can participate in that network and the value can derive from that, I'm convinced that's going to be, have an important role in the future, right? And I think that was my wow moment. That was the moment I just fell in love with the idea, with the technology. I was unbelievably impressed by Tom and his thinking and the way he sort of explained to me. It was a new world, and yeah, that's what made me work 5.5 years, 4 years, really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. And generally this concept of digital identities is really gradually picking up steam. A lot of people are talking about the volatile crypto markets, right? But most people don't even have that so much on the radar. So there's such a big upside potential in the long run for this. I think it's just very, very promising stuff at the end of the day. In regards to the current status quo of digital identities, how would you describe the industry as a whole right now? And where do you see kind of the major obstacles that still need to be surmounted before digital identities really become mainstream, or are they mainstream maybe?
To be fair, Nicolas, I mean, we also at Riddle Code, we're not looking at human identities. Yeah, so we're really deeply into object and machine identities, and I think the state. If I compare today with 4 years ago, I think the awareness has changed dramatically. I think what we also see is awareness picking up on the hardware level, not only on the software level. And I think that the third element, and that's been driven a lot by the evolving data markets, is the understanding the requirement that the trust layer needs to be embedded with hardware into the machine, into the identity itself. So I think that's for the industries where we are really active in fintech, energy, mobility, materials. I think that has been the major change.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I mean it's very exciting. Do you maybe on the side, like out of the blue, do you also believe that in the future, when you're talking about identities for machines on chain, do you also see that this is a path most likely that will also be relevant to, for instance, artificial intelligence at the end of the day, and let's say when it really picks up steam?
I think that the combination of this is enormously powerful, and I think yes, there is going to be there are a lot of use cases already where artificial intelligence, especially if you combine mobility and energy, plays a vital role, and we are in a couple of POCs where we see this. I would even call this as the product layer, right? So you have the identity layer, you have the chain, which to me represents the infrastructure to some extent, right? And then on top, we see these product layers evolving, and the product layers are very much rooted into the identity, and of course, the transactional layer, which is being derived from new business models, which are basically enabled through this new infrastructure.
Okay, very exciting. So we've already, talked a bit about, some of the areas that Riddle Code is focusing on, but maybe in your own words, what exactly is Riddle Code, and generally also how does Riddle Code maybe differentiate itself from other industry competitors?
Sure. Nicolas, I would love to play just a short video. I hope everybody can see it, just introducing Riddle Code and what we do in a 2-minute video.
Perfect.
We are facing an incredibly contagious and dangerous virus that is moving across the world from one hotspot to another.
We don't have immunity to this virus. It's a new virus. It's a pandemic strain of a virus we haven't seen before.
We're going to call out anyone and everyone who's using this virus as a political weapon against the
Perfect. Very exciting video. You can really see that you've worked in the media sector before, right? Very professional. To the listeners on Spotify or Apple podcast, I advise you to just check it out on YouTube, and or maybe Alexander, you have some other information on your website. It probably they can find it as well, and it's a very exciting video. Thanks so much for sharing.
No, thanks, Nicolas, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share it. I mean, obviously, this is our year-end video of 2020, right? Which was a tough year in many ways. I think for many of us, especially for startups, you know, in a very dynamic space, it's been a true challenge. But coming back to your question, what Riddle Code does, and so instead of maybe looking at this from an academic perspective, let's talk about what we do on an everyday basis. Who are the customers? What do we sell? What do we buy? Who do we talk to? So I think that the first very easy to understand business line is our fintech business line. Yeah? So we've split ourselves up into 4 business lines, and fintech caters towards the financial industry. It caters towards the traditional as well as the neobanks and exchanges, and that has started in 2017 when we got approached by a private bank, and the task was very simple at that time, whether we could build infrastructure for them which is audit proof, follows the business processes of a private bank in Switzerland, but allows them to securely store cryptocurrencies and transact and handle. And Tom had just an amazing way of looking at this. I mean, I every now and then I'm just witnessing how he does things on a technical and also on an economic level. But he basically designed an on-premise solution which would allow the bank to really offer high net worth individuals to invest into cryptocurrencies, but at the same time live up to the requirements of an auditor and the regulator in Switzerland. And this is how we started our fintech business, right? And today we provide custody services to as I said, financial institutions, banks, stock exchanges. We are sometimes we are a technology partner, so we deliver our technology. Sometimes we are even a custodian. Maybe worth mentioning, we are a fully regulated company and a fully regulated custodian here in Austria. So we allowed not only to tokenize, but also to hold custody for utility tokens, and if requested, also for cryptocurrencies. So we have a different set of rules and roles, if you want, in this small but fast growing segment. And what we see every day is that working towards regulation, with regulation, understanding regulation, as well as the business needs of established but also newly founded companies is important. And with this business unit, we really focus on this, right? And to give you a concrete example, and then also to switch to the next business line, is like energy, right? We've started this project with Wien Energy, which is truly exciting. It's amazing what you can do when you invest into a PV plant, and then your energy is tokenized and energy becomes a currency. But at the same time, you realize, hey, if I tokenize, I need to put the token somewhere for the client, and from a regulatory perspective, you need a custody license to do so. Yeah. So we worked a lot with the financial authorities here in Austria, who are really understanding, listening really well, helping us in the process. I really need to underline that twice. So we don't only provide custody for financial clients, but also for our energy clients. So, and that takes me to our next business line, which is energy. And here in energy, we combine, the trust anchor, which our hardware represents, our trusted gateway, which is mounted directly to the PV plant, the solar panels, and signs the energy produced, tokenizes, handles the tokens, puts into custody, and this business process in a one-stop shop is what we provide at Riddle Code Energy Solutions. Right? We're really proud that we found Wien Energy as a partner. Every now and then, I tend to be very critical about the Austrians, but here I must say I was really surprised myself. It was amazing to see, and literally they're just a skyscraper on the other side of the street. And you know, it's been now a 2.5-year fantastic partnership, and they went commercial 2 weeks ago, sold thousands of subscriptions, and you know, the message that you can really give provenance to green energy, and you make this green energy a currency, and then you can use this currency to buy third-party services, to pay your bill, you know, and the vision all this has to just carry around your green energy in your pocket and use it as something of value, I think is amazing, right? And again, this is driven by the regulatory changes which we've been seeing in Europe, and especially Austria has been taking that very seriously. A bit you know, different to the Germans, I must say, you know, that. But here in Austria, they've been really working hard with the industry to be able to you know, work on carbon reduction programs. So that's energy and fintech, and if you want, this is a big part of Riddle Code these days. And it's amazing to see how much scale this represents, right? Because our development, the technical platform, is applied in both industries. Next to energy, I need to talk about mobility. We've been lucky, and we've met you know, the Daimler team very early in their beginning, so to say, when they were looking, you know, Harry was looking at different ways of setting up an ecosystem in mobility, and we've been part of this ecosystem. This is where we also started to see these, you know, similarities, or if you want, these interdependencies with energy and with fintech. So mobility, energy, and fintech, they not only collaborate, but they live very closely these days, because from a consumer perspective, you know, this ecosystem is something which they would like to use their tokens, or if you want, they see a new value chain evolving. And in mobility, we really focus on giving the car an identity. You know, so the car wallet, as we call it, is the basis for trust. And we have been working the past months on different ways of how we can take this trust really to the next level, in the sense of that we monetize this trust. And I can only say that, you know, there are a few things to be released soon. Too early to talk about this now. But I think we had fantastic ideas, and I need to say the technical team, they've just done an amazing job in getting this to the next level. Going back to the very beginnings of Riddle Code, we've been looking at especially the luxury industry and materials, because provenance of material is very much connected with the provenance, or the promise of a brand, right? And so as many projects, we've been seeing blockchain and blockchain identity topics very much rooted towards or you know, connected to the luxury industry. We've pivoted a bit from the luxury industry, I must say, and we are working now a lot with materials and packaging providers. Again, this has been driven by a lot of the requests coming from regulation, right? There's the product passport, there is carbon footprint. It's, you know, suddenly industry needs to look at the end-to-end production of, you know, especially in mobility, automotive, you know. And we have been taking a partnership with Steel Smart, which is a partner company of ours, you know, really focusing on steel and the identity and the value of steel along the value chain. And here we take the certificates and the steel and make it machine readable and then tokenize. And then at the same time, we have been also working with companies like Sure Flexibles, who is a plastic packaging company here in Austria, to integrate identity in a secure way into the packaging and make this identity again available on distributed ledger. So, you know, this is materials. We've been working a lot with antenna technology, with NFC technology. So here, if you want, the technology stack is complemented by you know, the end user access points, and we've done really amazing stuff, and also a lot of patents around it. So this is Riddle Code. You know, I can talk about us for an hour now, but you know, this is in a nutshell what we do. We're 45 people now. You know, our headquarters are here in Vienna, but we scattered around Europe now, especially after Corona. It's a young team with you know, 2 people running it who have gray hair, and you know, every now and then say we got the T-shirt, and you know, Tom and I enjoyed it very much, and I think this is the amazing part. If you get the chance to work with, you know, young people in an industry which is changing at lightning speed, but at the same time you can bring to the table experiences from your past. So
yeah, it seems like Riddle & Code has a very, you know, on the one hand, diverse product field in regards to what it offers, right, to the respective ecosystem, and on the other hand, also a very diverse team, right? You kind of pair experience with disruptiveness. So it's very exciting stuff. So thanks for this intro, and I'm definitely curious to hear what your not in a nutshell version of an intro of Riddle & Code sounds like. So very interesting. 2 more things about Riddle & Code I would just like to quickly touch on. On the one hand, as you mentioned, energy as a currency, and that's really stuck out of what you mentioned. Could you maybe just, again, in a nutshell, you know, kind of describe what energy as a currency really means and how the life cycle of this looks like?
I think let's be very concrete. So here in what does Wien Energy do? They have launched the largest PV plant here in Austria. They've invited the public to invest into the PV plant by, you know, spending 250 euros, and in return, the production of solar energy is tokenized, right? And these tokens can be used in, you know, the ecosystem of Wien Energy, and Wien Energy is slowly building out this ecosystem. Now, so you have trust at the very beginning, at the source of the production, and now we're starting to complete this trust on all the points where you can redeem the tokens, right? So we are building a fully fledged trusted network on the basis of energy production. That's where the value is derived from. This is what's the collateral? The collateral is the energy produced, but it's the trusted energy, and it's the green energy. And Nicolas, I think that's the important part. When I say energy as a currency, it's one thing, but the value of energy as a currency is if you can prove the provenance of the energy, and you can prove that it adds more value, that it's been, you know, produced, it's green energy, and you know, it lives along the, you know, it lives the life cycle of the consumer, who, you know, in a very in a very active way made the decision to put 250 euros into a basically crowdfunding of PV plants. Yeah. And I think this is what you see, you know, evolving, and the next, so everybody will become an energy entrepreneur. Yeah. So you know, this is what we communicate is, you know, you spend 250 euros and you're now an energy entrepreneur. So the first step is to create a utility token. The second step is going to be a security token in some way. And I think this is maybe it's just worth mentioning. You know, these borders, they're blurred, and as you know, Nicolas, I'm sure it's the same in Liechtenstein, right? It's about how do we package this, how do we get this to market, and how can we package it in a way that this can be appreciated by the consumer. It can be appreciated in a way that he sees additional value, he appreciates the value, and that stacks out as a difference. And this is what innovation needs. Innovation needs relevance rather than just existence. Yeah, and then you know, that I think is the message I would like to give. This is what we work hard on. Is like, okay, there's a lot of things we can do technically, but is it relevant to the market? Is it relevant to you know, the person on the street, or is it relevant to that very company?
Yeah, and my answer would be yes, it is, right? Definitely relevant, because energy is something that affects us in our everyday lives, right?
I would agree, and I think I don't know how you feel, Nicolas, but I see that changing the same way. You know, privacy attitude has changed, right? So you know, 3 years ago, people weren't concerned at all about privacy, and then a few things happened, and now everybody says, "Oh, no, I'm not on Facebook." Yeah, and you know, 3 years ago, people were looking, say, it's a Tesla, nice, but now, you know, people say, okay, in mobility, I really would like to switch over. People are really concerned about how energy is being produced, and their willingness to go down that route is very much tied into the question: do they trust us? You know, if you can prove to the consumer that the trust he gives you is being valued, and you give him the chance to check, you know, and to really redeem, you know, if you want, that this trust has been really integrated in the whole proposition. That I think that's what makes the difference. And this is what our trusted gateway does. You know, basically it signs the production.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you build kind of an interface, right, between the two worlds, right, the digital world and the physical world through the products and services that you offer. And
that's why we call the blockchain interface company, right?
Exactly. I was referring to that. Yeah, so you wanted to say something?
No. I think that's also the amazing part, right? Because every day we work with companies, we work with individuals who want to prove that what they do in the real world is being represented in the digital space the right way. I mean, we can talk about digital twins, but I think that's a bit of an old-fashioned way of looking at it. But at the end of the day, I also personally believe that, you know, data and, you know, the whole economy, which is based on these data or the machine production, it can only grow and be of value if it's trusted.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's a lot of great projects coping with also data tokenization out there, which is also a very interesting topic. And on the other hand, you know, what you mentioned in regards to privacy and you know, on the other hand, still trust, right? These two aspects. And that's where blockchain really has a great use case with, you know, innovations such as zero knowledge proof, which I think will in the next years become even more relevant when we really look at the broader scope of how we envision kind of the Web 3.0 to kind of play out in the next years. So at this stage, I would just like to kind of barge in with the weekly Be in Crypto special question that the community has. You kind of already touched on it, and I know you cannot speak too much about it, but they were interested in what are the next steps for Riddle Code in terms of security and tokenization.
Well, I think we're looking at this as a 360 exercise, right? And there's nothing I can tell. I cannot tell you, because we're looking at so many things at the same time. And I think you know, Tom, who's the founder of Riddle Code, he's you know, taking the lead on this, and he's looking at the ecosystem. And you know, Nicolas, the ecosystem is changing dramatically fast, right? And I can just add to this that regulation is changing so fast, and because we see that, I think that to give you a fair answer, is taking a fair resource of us besides our operational duties and projects. And so there is no answer I can give you other than that we are really looking into all of the options. What I'm personally really excited about is that I see more and more serious projects now on the horizon, right? So we're getting, and this is why I'm, by the way, so excited about this energy project, is because it's a commercial deployment. Yeah, it's not a POC or MVP, or, you know, it's really, it's out there. People can buy it. It's audited. It's monitored. And I think this is what the entire industry needs to move away from, if you want a separate ecosystem combined with counterculture, where the old industry looks at and say, okay, what are these guys doing, right? I mean, Nicolas, I'm sure you know about, you know, all these real estate projects, and, you know, all of this needs to move from nice to have to become relevant, right? And I think this is what we as an industry need to work on. And this is, that is one of the values Tom and I have been giving Riddle Code from the very beginning, is you need to live up to professional standards. And I think this is as tough as it is. You know, I can tell you, if you negotiate with the procurement department of Daimler, you know, after having done this, I thought, how can a normal startup survive this? But, you know, this is required so we can move this to something which becomes relevant in its context.
Okay, yeah, and then maybe at this stage, one question is in regards to just generally tokenization. What is your personal favorite tokenization use case? I mean, you touched on a couple of, but what interests you personally the most out of all of these?
I have two, to be honest. Yeah, it's but not to be too boring. You know, I would say now it's energy. You know, everybody would say, "Well, okay, he's been talking about this anyway all the time." I think my second one is, and that's very much rooted in my history, right? If you look at infrastructure, and if you look at the way infrastructure is packaged towards consumption and usage, I think we can change that dramatically with tokenization, right? I think, you know, the old concept of, okay, here's a company, the company spends, I don't know, 4 billion on an infrastructure, it deploys the infrastructure, and then, you know, it waits for usage. I think tokenization can change that, and because the incentivation model for building networks might change.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Also, you know, the hardest part, especially in mobile and fixed line, is not build the network. It's not even find the money. It is getting the subscribers on the network, right? And if we agree that we in Europe, we have this interest of improving our infrastructure, you know, making sure that our infrastructure and our accessibility to infrastructure is better than in the US or in Asia, because it's just a competitive edge, then maybe that is something I would love to do. Yeah? So this is why I work a lot with you know, the telcos and the, you know, of the world, and to find maybe a new way.
Okay, yeah, and I think also what you mentioned is a very crucial point to the entire token economy of the future. You know, the incentive mechanisms that you can build in that, right?
Yeah.
So, and then when you pair them with aspects such as transparency and real-time data, then it's just going to build a much more, you know, dynamic ecosystem in the future, that and a more decentralized, obviously, as well, but just generally the way, you know, information and value is transferred from A to B. And you know, I always kind of like that example. You go to a Starbucks, you pay with your, I don't know, frequent flyer miles, and then you go to an Apple store and maybe you pay with energy. You know, it's going to be a very interesting model in the future when we see kind of the tokenization of everything play out.
I tend to disagree with, to some extent, if you allow me, Nicolas. Yeah, because
sure.
I think that it's the question here is about the relevance, right? And how, you know, and this is the defined balance between what is technically possible, right, and what is really relevant to us as an individual and as a society. And what I meant earlier was, you remember this private-public partnership models, you know, which are around, especially in the context of infrastructure, right? So how can we finance green energy in a different way? How can we create energy communities? How can I make my personal assets accessible to a third party in a new way, right? And you know, if you look at models like helium, for example, I think really interesting, right? Okay, you build a wireless network basically, and then you also allow other, you know, third parties to build your infrastructure and routers, and you open source the, you know, the technical descriptions. And this is, I think this is what's coming, Nicolas, right? I think the token economy allows the individual a new way to become entrepreneurial. Now, what we need to find is access points for these individuals to be relevant entrepreneur, right? It's not that I'm saying that what is out there and can be bought on, you know, as a token is not relevant, but I'm saying, you know, it's about the packaging and how can we incentivize, not only from a token economy perspective, but also from an old economy perspective, by saying, okay, if you buy these type of tokens, they might be tax redeemable. They, you know, you might get another benefit. So there's a lot of things which will happen, I think, over the next 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree with that. So as we are coming to the end of our conversation, and I know it's a Friday evening, so I would like to just ask you the question that I always pose to my guests is, where do you see blockchain in general in 10 years from now?
You know, I need to go, before I give you the answer, I need to look back into my history, right? So I've seen so many things happening, you know, especially in the digital ecosystem, right? I've met people at Nokia when they were worth 250 billion, and then a couple of months later, because, you know, there was an iPhone, they were just non-existent anymore. We both have experienced Corona, right? And I tell you what, it's amazing to see that in today's world, finally people understand that digital processes don't mean, okay, I use Zoom. Yeah. So and we are undergoing a real transition in the way we operate and make business, right? And I think that blockchain will have a very relevant place in this new ecosystem. Yeah, it will not be a revolution, it will be an evolution. And I think especially in the European context, and this is why I like a lot of what the European Union and the regulation does. I like that a lot, what they're trying to do. If we use this technology to if you want get a fragmented market into a fragmented digital market into a scalable situation, because it's defragmented by technology, right? Then I think the place will even outgrow its benefits, if you know, because a lot of the value will go from silo to decentral, just purely because its design allows more value to be captured. And I personally hope that this is going to be the case. If you ask me, there's two reasons. One, why I do this? One, because I just love working with the team and with Tom, and I learn every day, which is amazing, and I think that's the best you can have. And the second is, I think we in Europe, if we boost this technology, and if you create this technology to be something more, which is basically common good, and we create a social element to this technology and allow us to enter a new economic order, then I think this is real improvement, and I think that there's a chance in 10 years that we might be there. And finally, there might be another external shock. You never know. I mean, before Corona, we if I would have told you 2 years ago, okay, we will all be in lockdown, you would say, no, I can't believe that, right? So maybe there's going to be another external shock, and these shocks they seem to have a huge impact in the way we operate.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Johnny, most listeners and viewers probably know this, but COVID has really accelerated, the digitization and blockchain, the whole industry. It basically, apart from when we look at other industries which were really struggling, the blockchain industry just kept on rolling and actually accelerating. We had I'm not talking about the crypto prices, right? But actually just the progress within the industry. So it's always exciting to see. So yeah, at this stage, thanks, Alexander, for this amazing interview. It was a pleasure to speak with you. And I advise everyone to check out Riddle Code. I didn't get to ask you about the, kind of gray/black and white branding, which I wanted to do, but maybe we'll do it on another show. And yeah, it was a pleasure to have you. And thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. Thank you.
Perfect.
Pleasure. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And to our listeners, as always, feel free to reach out to me via the channels on LinkedIn or via email. It was a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.